Hello, Ezzeddine Jade. How are you today, and where are you dialing from? Jade,
Hi,
Ezzeddine,
good
you can go
afternoon.
first. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Jade, please.
Thanks, Ezzeddine. Thanks, Kate. It's nice to be here. I'm dialing in from Singapore.
Yeah,
And
all
Ezzeddine?
good. I'm here in UAE, Dubai.
That's where our company is. Well, thank you so much for. I know you're swamped today, you have a busy schedule, but thank you so much for taking your time and joining my hot seat session. The purpose of which is to help companies all over the world address their blind spots and gain competitive edge with the help of our wonderful mentors. I know we had a pre conversation already that a lot of companies we are striving to be sustainable where we are not yet there, so I'm really happy to discuss this topic. And actually, first of all, I'd like to learn more about your expertise before we proceed. Jade?
Sure. So I've been in sustainability for 14 years. I started my career in carbon markets in 2009. And back then it was a hot topic, similar to what it is today, except there's obviously been a broad range of movements and evolutions, which have been quite exciting in the last 14 years. Following carbon markets, I moved into renewable energy and I was in project development for renewable energy throughout Africa and Australia for the better half of 10 years, focusing on all types of renewables from ground mounted solar to rooftop solar to hydro and biomass, as well as large scale wind projects. I then moved into sustainability strategies, as well as then a bit more recently, before my current role, I was in financial productization with a climate and sustainability focus, as well as sustainability reporting and coming from the compliance angle to see what can be done in terms of disclosures and call it market narratives in terms of what companies are doing, both from a regulatory perspective, but also then from a call it marketing perspective to also reduce the greenwashing.
Thank you. Azadine?
Well, my profile is a little bit all over the place. I'm an electrical engineer, and at university, I like to play. I used to like to play with the equipment and stuff. And after graduation, I worked in IT. I was serving the banking and financial industry. I worked in the banking and financial industry in many areas, and I focused on providing technology solutions, ERPs. And moving forward, I continued with consultancy. I moved to financial risk management. And the past 8 years, I moved completely into the energy sector. I'm working currently in Dubai for district cooling. And along the way, I've got introduced to the concept of sustainability. And then I found a crossroad between digital transformation and sustainability. Because as we will be discussing today, there is a lot of intersection between those two fields, energy being a sector that is being discussed heavily in terms of renewable energy, circular economy, and digital transformation being a tool and a mindset change, helping organizations in changing the way they tackle the current challenges.
Thank you. I really like that you stressed this point because us as Gleek, we are a startup company and we know perfectly well what it's like to be faced with all these rapid technological advancements, as well as, this heightened environmental consciousness that we understand needs to be addressed. So my first question goes to you. I'd like to ask you, what are some maybe trends in sustainability or technologies that, will in sustainable digital transformation that businesses should be aware of? It's really important to pay attention to right now.
Well, to be honest, I mean, it's not always about the technology or the tool. First of all, I would like to pave the conversation with some concepts that need to be available or made available and made aware in any organization that is embarking on its journey towards sustainability. So, believe it or not, I mean, every company was created to deliver something, a product or a service, right? And along the way, they have mastered how they do it and the things around it. However, the message have changed. I mean, organizations where they when they were established, it was basically satisfying the why of the shareholders. So we were brought up to bring in profit to the shareholders. But this why is basically changing, because as we have noticed, the many decisions that any organization have taken has created an impact, whether on the society, on the environment, or on anything else. So a lot of organizations now are rethinking their why statement. Why am I doing basically this, or am I doing basically that? And here, the core of things is basically a decision, and the decision in a digital format is data. So this is where data crosses with the why of the organization. And since why now is moving towards sustainability, meaning better utilization of resources, right? So an organization have to start thinking from the mindset perspective, re-tackling all the why decisions they are making, and how they are doing that, and then digitalizing it along the way. So it is first, it requires a mindset shift. It requires an integration between a business objective and the sustainability objective, which is basically understanding and realizing the impact of the decisions we are making, and along the way having the tools and the skills to capture those decisions in order to see the resulting data and then reflect upon it. So these are the trends, and again, this is in part the challenges that a lot of organizations are basically facing.
Thank you. And I actually really like what Jade pointed about that, sustainability has been present for a while. This concept has been there for maybe 20, maybe even more years. I'm not aware of that. But right now, especially for me, it's not just a term of something that is going to happen in the future. We already feel the impact of human actions. And I feel like our children, if it's not addressed now, they will feel the double of it. So I would like to know, Jade, it's not just about customers anymore who would like to trust companies who are sustainable. It's also about our investors who want to invest in companies who are sustainable. So, do sustainable practices actually make businesses more viable and more appealing when it comes to their investors and maybe potential acquirers?
Absolutely. So what we're seeing from deals perspectives, because I run the ESG due diligence for KPMG in Singapore, and the investors are coming to us and saying we need to do an ESG assessment before we choose to invest. And when we look at the types of companies that they are investing in these types of mergers and acquisition deals, they are considering environmental aspects where it comes to water, biodiversity, air pollution, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, carbon emissions is a big factor, looking at the decarbonization strategies that are in place or not in place, and why the management has made that decision. Then there's the social factors around fair labor practices, employer remuneration, diversity and inclusion. And then that leads on to the governance factors. So does the board have oversight? What is the board doing in terms of data? What is the company doing in terms of governing data, which is very important, particularly around the privacy of data and the securitization of data. Cybersecurity risk is another one we would look at and assess whether those types of policies are in place. So when we look at valuations, even if the, call it, sustainability practices are not increasing or decreasing materially the valuation of an organization, it is becoming part and parcel of the financial due diligence, tax due diligence, legal due diligence that investors are asking for. And in addition to that, various asset managers are looking at the same or similar when they look to invest in organizations. They are getting monitored themselves in terms of their own emissions, their own investment policies, either from the shareholders or from the market regulators, to say, how are you investing responsibly in terms of these organizations, and how are you viewing that? So there are quite a few bodies who consolidate this information and engage various companies, maybe on behalf of various asset managers, to see how we can move the real economy forward from a decarbonization perspective. And going back to what Ezzeddine was saying, that data is really important, and that digitization of data is going to become even more important, because there's a lot of data. you've got carbon emissions and water metering, et cetera. And I don't believe that, even though we think we're superhumans, we don't have enough power, right, that AI might have to analyze this data to find trends. And through those trends, actually, there's a lot of cost savings that companies can have by implementing energy efficiency, et cetera, et cetera. So that data and digitization is almost, call it, forming a foundation of some of these sustainability solutions as we go forward.
I absolutely agree. And actually, now that we acknowledge the problem of sustainability, as Asadine said, it requires not just a change, it's a shift in your whole mindset. And I feel like it's really hard for some companies, especially the ones with well-established processes, to just go and adjust. So my question to both of you, what kind of challenges you may have seen or encountered when businesses try to implement sustainable practices into their operational models? What challenges they face, what issues?
Well, I believe, as we earlier mentioned, it starts basically the tone at the top. So, as it is mentioned, it is ESG. So, a G is a very important factor, and it cannot be neglected because it is like the glue of all the wide decisions that will happen once a company or an organization embarks on its sustainability journey. So I would definitely start with the G, the structure, the strategy, the governance, the support, the policies, right? Moving forward to the integration. In many cases, we see the challenges start with, do we separate a business objective from a sustainability objective? Because this kind of integration emerges on the operational level in terms of lack of budget, lack of support, lack of awareness, lack of training, lack of focus in terms of projects to be adopted. So many organizations might skip this part, but we see it is the core and the foundational aspect in the journey itself. Once this is agreed and there is a structure and mechanism moving forward, then then the company needs to understand and realize the impact on these which is called in technical terms the materiality matrix. So what do I impact and what do I need to focus on? Because this is where the shift happens based on the decisions. So this is the second move moving forward. And then when the things are in operation, the digital tools that will basically help produce the data required. And of course, when data is always coupled with the famous topics like data quality, data governance, audits, assurance. So again, we don't want to produce data that is meaningless. And moving forward, one aspect which I always like to talk about is sustainability is like telling a story. From the same set of data, you could be producing many stories. For example, in diversity and inclusion, adding the number of females in an organization could tell many stories. Adding the number of females in senior position could tell another story. And again, it's all working towards the same direction, but there is a difference in the impact and value you're creating from the same KPI. So all these things, we see them in the translation of operation. Of course, maturity, assessing the maturity of sustainability in an organization is another aspect, which basically starts from foundation to year 2, year 3, and moving forward. And it is very important to instill an aspect of, let's say, motivational aspect in the sustainability journey. So put challenging targets, revise your strategy, understand how the initiatives are working towards or against the objectives and the commitment that you have made.
Jade, do you have anything to add?
Yeah,
about challenges?
I think that's very, very well put. What I see a lot of the time in the market is what happens is a client will come to us potentially with a mandatory disclosure. So climate reporting in Singapore is mandated by the exchange. And it's interesting. They might want to tick a box from a compliance perspective because no one wants to be non-compliant with the regulator. But slowly but surely they see the value that sustainability can offer to them from a business model perspective. And instead of it sitting just within the compliance and reporting team, it starts to, like this water flowing through the company into the risk management and how it gets integrated into the risk management process. It integrates into the communication. So like Ezzeddine was saying, in terms of the narrative. So that's very important. Obviously, when you're disclosing to the market and to potential investors and shareholders, etc., to ensure that there's no greenwashing, so that what the story that you're telling is reflective of actually what you're doing on the ground and through the business and through the strategic operations and how you're governing your business, both from those metrics and targets and the data that you're collecting and the data that you're actually using to inform your strategy and your business models going forward. So it starts to have this very interesting effect through the business. And as we come in maybe from just the pure regulatory side, we see it start to evolve from a strategic imperative side. And on the one side, it's very important to mitigate the risk, but on the other side, it's as important to leverage any opportunities that you might see. And what we're seeing is as the market is evolving, it's moving from a pure mitigation of risk perspective to actually new business models cropping up to leverage opportunities and to say that we've got something interesting from a opportunity perspective that the market might need, and finding ways for the entrepreneurs now to come in as well to find those and fill those gaps. So particularly in emerging markets, it's interesting to find these entrepreneurs and these startups happening to try solve these problems where, like we said a bit earlier, sometimes it's hard to move, very big corporates. But even within very big corporates, throughout the supply chain, they're having a really incredible influence on the small, medium, and call it maybe mom and pop shops, because they are part of that supply chain, which feeds into a bigger animal. So it's really very much a change management, systems thinking, not just within an organization, but actually globally. We're really trying to shift the whole global structure. And that's not an easy feat. And that's why in the sustainability world, this word journey is sort of everywhere, because it really is a transitional journey. And it's about taking baby steps along that. And it's important to take the baby steps, because without the baby steps, you're not going to get to the end goal. And that end goal is obviously where we all want to get to.
Thank you. Actually, I want to add something myself. I'm not a sustainability expert in no way, but working in different companies even before Gleek, I faced the issue that sometimes, yes, it starts from the top level, but it's all about motivation, as Ezzeddine said, because sometimes top level, they just try to impose the changes that they want to implement, but the company, the team, they just don't comprehend the full scale of the problem of what's going on in the world, because there are still people who do not feel the sustainability actually needs to be addressed. And if your team does not understand it, there's no way your company will also change. Am I correct?
So I think so. We do quite a bit of sort of capacity building, but what we try to do is in a way not the doom and gloom, the world's over sustainability story. We actually talk to them from a business imperative, because if you don't address material, like Ezzeddine said, material aspects, risks, opportunities, etc., anything material to your business actually might not survive. And if your business doesn't survive, what does that mean to you? So if you look at sustainability from the business angle, it's got a business imperative. And then obviously we have it as a motivational passion, because we don't want to be harming the planet. We want to survive, and we don't want all these disastrous impacts on our lives. But from a business angle, it's an imperative to shareholders and stakeholders.
Thank you. This is actually a really great point. Ezzeddine, you'd like to add
I would
something?
like to reflect on this one. I do agree with Jade completely. And if I would use an analogy for that, it would be comparable to a hard landing versus a soft landing when you're in an airplane. And I think this is one of the struggles or challenges any organization is currently facing. How do we do that? How do we propagate sustainability? How do we contaminate? How do we create relevance? Is it? I mean, there are, and I believe it's a lot of experimentation is going on that perspective. Is it the hard landing whereby we put a KPI integrating sustainability in the performance management of a lot of employees, pushing them to move in this direction? Is it more of a gamifications? Is it through learning and development? And if we are doing that, how are we measuring its effectiveness? How are we creating a focus? Are we getting the ROI we want? So I can't say there is a right way of doing that. However, the complexity of the thing is I would use the term attribute. So before, our jobs was relevant to verticals, we call it verticals, or an attribute. Now our work requires a lot of attributes, which translates in the HR field as skill set. So it's no more that you're an engineer. You're an engineer with the green skill and procurement skill, etc., etc. So this created another buzzword about upskilling. So I know a lot of organizations are now working very effectively and spending a lot of money on that aspect. But what I would recommend here is to create the relevance, similarly to what Jade has mentioned. How do you come up with the relevance? Because this is basically a form of alignment to make sure that people are still motivated and their output is able to transcend to the requirement of sustainability.
Thank you. I think you've already touched upon the solutions that we can, offer to help companies become more sustainable. But to wrap up, I would like to summarize what are some, strategies or maybe steps you can recommend companies to take who are just, embarking on their sustainability journey and they're just trying to integrate sustainability into their operational models. Ezzeddine, you can continue if you have
Yeah,
something to add.
so what worked for us, I would say, is there are a lot of programs, online programs like in the L&D arena, is to choose courses, which is a form of a gamification. So the outcome of a course is basically a topic you would like people to get aware of, to learn more about it, and to be able to produce something along the way of the course that is relevant to your industry. For example, GHG accounting, or something related to green procurement, or something related to energy efficiency. So choose a learning curve, which is basically like grasping awareness, grasping knowledge, sharing as well, creating relevance to the organization you're working in, and making sure you have an output that is to be used later on as an input in your sustainability journey.
Thank you, Jade.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think for me, sustainability is such a broad topic. And it's about staying curious in terms of sustainability and what's relevant to you. So if you're sitting within the risk team, in the supply chain, in procurement, in the C-suite, you've got slightly different focus, different KPIs. So if you want to do an online course, there are many out there which might speak to you and help you understand maybe your area better, or actually another area better, so that you can have those cross-functional dialogues and build knowledge within the company itself. But from an organization perspective, it's really just about taking the first step. And I think going back to what Ezzeddine was saying in terms of data, if you can measure something, you can monitor something, and therefore you can manage it, and you can talk about it, and you can amend your processes, and et cetera, et cetera. So by measuring your carbon, and even if it's your scope 1 or scope 2, scope 3 is a much bigger piece to tackle, but just getting your house in order, call it, and understanding what your carbon is, or your water, or your waste, really is a step towards sustainability practices, because then you can actually understand where your impact is, and also where, like I keep saying, not just the risk, but maybe there's opportunities there as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jade and Ezzeddine. I really loved this insightful conversation. Absolutely enjoyed how your answers were complementing each other from different points, that it actually helped me, and I hope our audience as well, create a well-rounded picture of understanding the problem and solutions. And if our audience enjoyed this conversation as well, I really encourage you to check the caption and see how you can work with Jade and Ezzeddine to help you start your sustainability journey in your company. Thank you so much, Jade and Ezzeddine, for taking your time today, and I can't wait to see you thriving in our mentor community.
Great. Thanks,
Thank
Dean. Thanks,
you.
Kate.
Thank you.
Bye.